Welcome everyone to the ASPRS Mentors Podcast. I'm Greg Stamnes, Chair of the ASPRS Early Career Professionals Council. And we also have with us Jordan Hicks, Vice Chair of the ECPC. Jordan, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jordan Hicks, Vice Chair of the Early Career Professionals Council. I'm a Vice President and LiDAR Specialist in North Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm really excited to hear from Matthew Byrd today. Thanks, Greg.
So as Jordan mentioned, our guest this week is Matthew Byrd. Matt, are you okay with us recording this and sharing it on various platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
Perfect. So I guess our first questions are kind of around yourself and your story. And I just wanted to make a note that Matt has his own podcast, which we'll talk about today. But episode 68 was kind of a deep dive into his story. So maybe we'll just skim over it a little bit and invite listeners to check out episode 68 of the RCN podcast. But how did you fall into the surveying and reality capture world, and what initially drew you to this industry?
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for calling out that podcast. You're right. That is a 2-hour deep dive on some of my story. So I'll save I'll save some of the details and try to just touch on the bullet points. Yeah, I grew up with a land surveyor as a father. So honestly, that is how I entered the industry. Prior to getting into survey, I did not really have a career path defined. I was into sports and then music, and I had a bad car accident I went through when I was in my last couple of years of high school that ended my ability to pursue sports. And so when I fell into land surveying, it was really the way most surveyors do, which is like, hey, it's a summer job, you have a relative in it or somebody. So I got started in surveying just on a field crew as a chainman and, kind of grew in to learn AutoCAD and get into the office. And I was young, at that time. I got started when I was 18 years old or so. Of course, there was some earlier since my dad was a surveyor. I think I was riding in the truck when I was a, younger teenager. But when I first got into the career path, I wasn't really passionate about it yet. I wasn't really bought into I really love surveying. I want to be a surveyor. What got me excited was learning about laser scanning. We were working in traditional survey, and I was I had my CAD job, and we had someone come demo a laser scanner to us. And that was the moment that really my whole career path changed. We saw that scanner as a tool that we could use in survey, but it was also very different than anything we had done before. And I was younger, I was good at learning, I liked technology. So I had the opportunity to be the guy at that survey firm that they, the owner and director said, why don't you take this and figure it out? And so I got to, test the scanners and start playing with it and figure out how to use it and go, of course, like everybody, scan your office or something in your city, start playing with data and really understand what is this? How can we use it? How do we pull it in and make deliverables? And that was really the moment my career changed from even pursuing traditional survey, even though it's very closely integrated and there's ways that it needs to be integrated. I found that the technology really needed somebody to dig very deep into it and understand it and focus on it and learn how to capture properly and learn how to register data. And so my whole focus went into that technology. My next couple years from that point, we built a department really around this new technology. We started scanning in oil and gas facilities and, on different buildings and bridges. And over a couple year time span, I really started personally seeing the application for these technologies across so many different use cases that we didn't historically work in. Before scanning, we weren't doing surveys of insides of buildings, right? It was the scanner that then had an architect say, hey, we saw that data, can you do it of a building? And then we had someone say, a lawyer say, hey, we have a construction defect investigation of a structure. Can you scan the structure? And it started just expanding this awareness of these tools can solve a lot of problems across many industries in the built environment. And that got me super excited and passionate. I started working really hard. I was learning at home. I was watching videos. I was playing with the scanner in my free time. All of my focus went into how can I get really good at this technology. And simultaneously to that, I was going to industry conferences and I started using LinkedIn a lot. So I equate these three things to really what boosted my career, in that I was meeting other professionals, I was digging into new technologies, and I was building this online community of them. Over a couple year time span, that ended up being a lot of people. I had several thousand at that time. And I was also starting to document and take pictures of, job sites we're working on and screenshots of point cloud data, and trying to educate people on, what is this? How does it work? How is it solving problems? That really is what started boosting me to be a guy that came to mind when people that I was connected with thought of scanning or thought of this new technology. They would think of me because I was talking about it all the time. I ended up getting a couple career jumps in my journey, from this small company to a large corporate firm. I got a management role. It was really like a dream job for me, but I found that I got so excited about the technology. Staying in a large corporate firm was not the move for me at that moment. Corporate companies move a little slower. They take time to implement things. You got to build policies. And I was a young, honestly, maybe kind of hectic entrepreneur at that point internally, where I was like, I want to go scan this. I want to try this. I want to work for this client. And that led me to quit my job and start my own company. I knew I was building the relationships. I had the expertise in the technology. And so I was like, I think I can solve more people's problems if I have the freedom to trial things that I want to try, or try different projects that I want to pursue, or work for different clients, as opposed to stay focused on just an internal department. That was for me at that time. I don't recommend that that's what everybody does, but it did work for me. I think there's also massive opportunity for people to do that within a firm, with a partnership, with a company. But that was really the journey that I had. Once I started my company, we started doing a lot of scanning support for other firms. We really continued to do the LinkedIn thing, which really built awareness, which brought more relationships. And that was 8 years ago. So over the last 8 years, we built that company up, and we were doing scanning and modeling and scan to BIM and drone work across really a variety of industries, from large warehouses and retail to oil and gas facilities to, commercial buildings and high rises, airports, kind of all over the place. Along that part of the professional journey, it really was built around services. One thing that I realized was that a big hindrance to growth for these technologies is honestly just the lack of awareness. And the fact that I always had to tell people what it is. If you just ask someone, do you know what a laser scanner is, or are you using it? They're like, what is a laser scanner? So I realized how, I had this network, I had this LinkedIn following. How can I start solving the knowledge problem? And that was where RCN was born from. It was this idea of, hey, instead of always having to explain one person at a time what scanning is, or how it works, or how someone could use it, what if we start recording conversations, talking with professionals that are using it or interested in it or trying to solve problems, and we record that and we publish that out to a larger community, and we send it out to our, LinkedIn audience we've been building. So it started with that idea of a better way to raise awareness to the technologies. And it also continued to then grow to, okay, we have a large community of people trying to pursue these. They're all having issues. They're all looking for insight. They all want to learn about the technologies. How can we further this even more than a podcast? And we decided, let's bring it together and actually put on our own industry conference, where all these people we know and are talking to and using these tools will be the people who come share a keynote presentation on use cases and how they're implementing it. We'll have panel conversations full of professionals to talk about the different technologies and topics and, where things are going. So this year is our 4th conference. We've done it for 4 years now, and we have attendees from 10 or 15 countries and almost every state in the US. And it's all these innovative people that are trying to solve the same problem. And again, I am kind of more of a visionary entrepreneur of like, I get these ideas, and sometimes, you know, you need a filter to say how many ideas do you launch at the same time. It is a lot to deal with. But after we did the podcast, after we started the conference and we see this community growing, the next thing we decided to launch was another way for people to make an impact within our community. You know, the podcast is a way for them to hear and see and learn. But the next thing we launched was our RCN committees. And that's actually a organization within RCN that professionals from around the world are volunteering time to get together and identify pain points around certain tech, talk about use cases, talk about challenges, and everybody's working together to try to solve some of those similar pain points that people are feeling and seeing. So I know that was actually a lot. I went from early to kind of where we are now, but happy to reverse back and, you know, dig into any specifics or questions. And
yeah, you're checking off a lot of my questions, which is okay. I have a random one out of that I think I was wondering from your episode 68 as well. Where did you start? Like, where was your dad's company? Was it in Boise?
No. So I grew up in Bakersfield, California. So it's in the Central Valley, about an hour and a half or 2 hours north of Los Angeles, off of the coast. So it's known for lots of oil and gas facilities and fields there, and lots of agriculture and farming. So that's where I grew up. That's where I got started.
Oh, okay. That's I was trying to connect a few dots in my head there. And how did you end up in where you are now?
Yeah. So honestly, it was an effort of trying to find a place that I thought was a little more enjoyable to live, better quality of life. I have a young family as well. And, you know, Bakersfield, as much as there's great people there, I don't have a lot of great things to say about it as far as living there. It's known for being very hot for many months of the year. I mean, 115 in the summer. It is, if you research it, it's the worst air quality city in the U.S. Lots of smog and things that settle there because it doesn't have anywhere to blow out. It comes down the grapevine. So there's certain aspects that I was like, you know, I kind of like the idea of just finding somewhere else that maybe has seasons, that has a little better weather, that's just, you know, we just decided to make a jump. My wife and I were looking into different areas, different cities or states, and Idaho checked a lot of the boxes for us just on location and, you know, amenities around, and, you know, even some of the, you know, politics and weather and a little bit of everything. It was just a random move for us. We were like, let's just go. We don't know anybody there, no family. We're just making the move. So we've been here for 6 years.
Had you been there before you moved there?
Yes, I did fly in once to actually come speak about laser scanning at a university. And I also had one really good client that was up here that we had done a lot of work for. So I did travel up before, and especially with work, I have flown to like 40 states in the U.S. Working on projects in different areas. So I've seen a lot of cities, a lot of environments, a lot of area, and the first impressions of Boise for everyone who's come and visit is like, man, that's a beautiful city. It's so clean. The weather's nice. So we made a couple trips and explored a little bit more, and it was a pretty quick move after that.
Yeah, like I think I mentioned it. I drove through there and had the same kind of thoughts when we drove through there, like, oh, this is really nice.
Yeah, our conference has always been here because it's where we're at. It's easier for us to put on. We're a small team. It's a new event. A lot of people ask, why in the world is your conference in Boise, Idaho? They're like, I've never been there. And we do get some complaints that it's like, man, it's kind of hard to get to because it's not a major airport. It's not international. And we have people from 10 or 15 countries that fly here. So it's an effort to get here. But everybody that has come has given the response of like, oh my gosh, it's so unique. It's different. Like everyone does conferences in Vegas or San Diego. Like it's kind of cool to do a new space, and it's just very low key. It's safe. It's clean. It's downtown is really nice. So it's been very enjoyable.
Yeah, it'd actually be really good for those people from out of the United States that are used to going to those big cities and then see like what a smaller center is like and go, oh wow, this is really different.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
So you've talked about collaboration as one of your keys to success. Can you discuss how working with others has helped you grow your business and explore new opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I think collaboration is key. For me, early on, I worked for who most people would say were my competitors. I have such a mindset of collaboration that I always have said I don't have competitors. They don't exist. I have people that are potential collaborators. I have potential partners. There's people who do similar things, but you can't be the expert at everything. And I also think there's so many times that with these technologies, even if let's say a construction firm has a department of people who do scanning, they are a small team and they cannot even handle all their own work at times. So my very first focus was like, I think that I can be a support mechanism for all the people that are trying to do similar work. So I grew by supporting who technically did the same things I did. I supported other scanning companies in, they were super busy and they needed another person to help go scan. They would hire me to come scan with them. Or they were so busy collecting data, but they didn't really have a great expertise at processing the data when they got back to the office. So I would support that piece. So really, I saw collaboration as a major part of growing my company for sure. And even then, as I started to expand what types of projects I worked in or what industries I worked in, the approach you have to take for capturing an oil and gas facility is very different than an airport. And the expertise you need to have and the understanding of the facilities and the infrastructure and what's important to them. And then it gets even more complicated when you're talking about the deliverables that you create from the data. If you're getting asked to go scan the parking lot of a retail center because they need it for civil drawings, right? Like, well, how do you capture that? What do you capture it with? What kind of deliverable do you create? Who's qualified to create that? I had to use partners in order to fulfill what clients were looking for. A client would come to me because they knew the technology piece, but they're like, hey, ultimately what we need is a better drawing, but we want to use this data. So I would have to say, okay, I can partner with an engineer or a surveyor or somebody that maybe creates that final deliverable because that's not my specialty, but I'll do the capture piece. Or if we're doing a as-built for an architect, well, the architect needs an as-built Revit model. Okay, well, then I might need to partner with someone who modeling is their expertise. So I saw collaboration as necessary because the ecosystem of technologies is so vast and the deliverables that need to be created for different industries are so vast and they do take specialty, right? Like an oil and gas facility may need a piping model that's intelligent in CADWorks or Plant 3D. Well, you don't know how to do that and Revit and Civil. And so to me, I've always said, like, I think finding what your specialty is and your lane is and kind of doubling down on that. And then there might be times that you realize, okay, we're going to expand our company to also handle Revit or Plant 3D. But it's unrealistic to think that you're going to accomplish all options, all deliverables, all platforms. So the best way to fulfill all of, the clients that may come to you is building out some partnerships and some collaborations with people that's their specialty. And I guess I'll say one more thing on that is like, I looked at that early on for the service side, but I also look at that for what we do with RCN, with our podcast, with our conference, with our committees. Like, my goal is never to recreate something that already exists and is successful. I try to create something that I think is going to fill a gap. And then I also want to partner with them. Some people have said, hey, I think this conference is your competitor. And I go back to, in anything I do not believe in competitors. I would rather go talk with that conference and align and say, hey, if we're at different time frames and we share community, like, let's build together. We're all trying to accomplish the same goal of awareness of technologies, helping connect people, networking. There's way more power in collaborating with people and sharing community and vision and, figuring out what those lanes are than having this competitive mindset, no matter what it is that you're trying to build.
I guess it was kind of your collaboration ideas helped your service business grow because you needed that. It was scalable because you were able to just reach out to all the additional support experts to get you to the finish line with deliverables on things that if you listen to episode 68 of Matt's podcast, he talks about his budget, when he started and how he started. And it's very interesting. You would definitely need to be open to collaboration with the approach you took to starting your business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's many ways to do things, right? You start from scratch and you're scrappy and you're taking on anything you can, or there's a route of building out a plan and getting funding and hiring the right people. And I think there's many ways people can build businesses. I knew nothing about business when I started. I did not know anything about building a business plan. I didn't know anything about investments or funding, or I started from scratch, and it was like, what do I know how to do? And who needs what I know how to do? And then that was it, pursue the work. I mean, I think there's all kinds of lessons learned that I've had over the last 10, 15 years, of suggestions I would have for people that are like, if you really set on starting a business, what would I do differently? And like you said, some of those I go deep into in that episode, but I think you have to have a passion for whatever you're going to do, because entrepreneurship, building a company, working for yourself is a lot harder than the movies make it sound, right? It's not hey, I'm gonna spend 4 hours a day, the rest is gonna be by the pool or taking vacation. It's like, no, building a business is very difficult, and you work a lot more. So you have to believe in why you're doing it and really what your long-term goals are, and it's a lot of work.
So reality capture encompasses like that overall umbrella term, kind of encompasses all these different technologies, and a lot of them are expensive, but they offer some kind of ROI. So can you talk about how technology saves the AEC industry time and money, and can you give any examples?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. There's a very wide range of solutions that are available and price points, right? You've probably seen videos. I even have some on our website of LiDAR on your iPhone, and you can use a phone to scan a room. Most people already have that in their pocket. Yet then there's scanners that are $15,000 or $50,000 or $150,000. So it all has to start with why you're going to do it. So if you're an architect, how does laser scanning help you? Well, if you don't scan, what is your normal process for doing an as-built documentation of a building? You're spending time going into a building with a tape measure and a notepad and a pencil and making measurements and drawing annotations and going back to the office and drafting that up digitally so that you can then get to renovation plans. So the first thing to look at is like, what do you do now, and how do one of these technologies potentially replace an older way of doing things or enhance it or create additional deliverables? If you take a building and you compare the time and cost that it takes in effort to create that deliverable, let's take a 20,000 square foot building. For you to go out and do everything by hand, it's going to actually end up being more expensive than running through it with the right scan solution and producing that deliverable. There is still learning curves to the technology. That's maybe why some people are hesitant to do it, is they don't understand it. They're a little afraid of a new process. They don't know how they use the data yet. But if you actually just compare traditional method to the new method, you're going to end up saving money. Sometimes scanners pay for themselves on one job just because of the level of effort. So first I look in that, and you'd have to do the same thing across different industries, right? That's an architect. Well, how does it help a surveyor? How does it help a mechanical engineer? How does it help someone who's doing HVAC? Yeah, there's different benefits and maybe ROI to different trades and people. One of the best ways, I think, for value to come out for a single project where all those people are collaborating is that the scanning would be done at a higher level for the whole company, the whole project team to end up using that data. So it's not, the cost doesn't only fall on one trade. It's that the owner or even the GC or somebody is the one who got that data to then share with trades. But I think there's a lot of ways that the ROI comes out of it. One is a direct replacement or enhancement of old services or old ways. The other, a lot of people do talk about this, that it's hard to calculate the ROI because it's also kind of like insurance. Sometimes you don't know how much you're going to save because you don't know what you would have run into if you didn't scan. So an example would be, a long time ago, we had a company that they were just going to try scanning for the first time with us. They were doing renovations of some very large 1,000,000 square foot warehouses for, food processing centers and retail. And some of the companies they worked for had historic drawings. They had 2D CAD plans that were their as-builts. Well, they had been using those on past jobs and running into problems when they would actually get into construction. And one of the reasons is because those drawings are never fully accurate to what exists in the field. It is an old design drawing that, yes, they call an as-built, but during construction, things were not built 100% to that design. So there are columns that are shifted off 6 inches. There's a wall that was built, after that drawing was done. So that is one of the common problems across all industries, is that nobody has fully updated, accurate documents of their assets. Doesn't matter if it's a facility, a building, an airport, nobody does. Renovations happen, things don't keep updated. Now, that example of that warehouse, though, if they were to move forward with a new design using old drawings and those structural columns were on the wrong spot in that 2D drawing, which they were, and they went through the new design and they had steel beams fabricated and they had them trucked to the site and they got into construction and they went to install them and they don't fit, well, now you've got wasted material, you have a delay in the project, they have to ship them back, they need to remeasure, they need to remake the steel. So there's so much headache that can come in the middle of a project if you're not working with accurate data from the beginning. And those numbers, it's hard to give a complete number to that, right? An ROI, but people over time have realized, the ones that have fully adopted scanning, scan the building, use that for your design, the reason is that they have run into so many of those headaches in the past, and then they tried scanning and they realized the accuracy improvement solved some of those problems. So now they do it up front, almost like an insurance, where it's like, we don't know what problems would arise until we get to the problems, but we do know if we scan up front, it's kind of like insurance, and it's there, it's improving, it's helping us avoid potential issues.
Yeah, one of the things that I've ran into in the past is like clients reaching out and saying, we need a drone survey of blank, or we need a GPS survey of blank. And I think it's really important for clients to define what they actually need and then let the professionals determine which tool should complete the task. And like you just described, oftentimes that'll be just laser scan it and and then let them realize the benefits over time of not having to go back 20 times to remeasure it. And so
I have a thought on that point.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that is a massive challenge in the industry right now. That a lot of people do not understand the technologies enough to know what to ask for or to know what to use. So there's actually a challenge in both directions, even of what you just mentioned, where if an owner just says, I want someone to scan this building, well, they're going to get 5 different proposals using 5 different pieces of hardware that have 5 different levels of accuracy so I think there needs to be some more education to the owners or the people asking for the data to at least understand some level of details to ask for, or how to even vet or compare the proposals if people are pitching different methods to use. And one of the other problems I see is that there are also a lot of users of the technologies that don't actually understand the detail and the different types of devices. If you just now heard about scanning, how do you know what device to buy and use? You kind of do some research, you Google it, you pick one that fits your budget, and you run with that. Well, that one may not necessarily be the right fit for all different project types. So I also see it's not on purpose, but I see a lot of service providers or people who get a scanner they get a cheap device, and then they go try to take on a really high level accuracy job. And they don't actually know that it's not accurate enough yet. They don't know that they needed survey control to improve, registration errors. They didn't know that they should have used LiDAR instead of photogrammetry. So to me, I see an education gap on both the owners, the people using it, the people buying the tools. And I see that happening where an owner would get 4 proposals. One is $50,000, one is $20,000. They don't know even what to ask for. They don't know to say, well, which device are you planning to use? And they don't know, okay, well, that one shouldn't be used because of this accuracy need. So I see this need to try to build education content for both the owners, the people asking for data, the people performing the data. It's really across the board.
So would you say that's like one of your primary goals with RCN?
That is definitely a primary goal. Whether that be through awareness building through conversations, like even this conversation, right? If an owner or a service provider hears this conversation and we talk about this pain point, it will make them maybe have that question mark in their head of like, oh, well, before we put that next proposal out, maybe we need to consider what devices we asked for, because I remember hearing them talk about this. So through podcast, it raised awareness. I also believe like the presentations that happen like at our conference and even some of our webinars, it continues to further that understanding, and that because you hear people talk about pain points. What have they had go wrong on projects before? How did they use different devices? So I believe all of this, if people immerse themselves in it, is what will help them with some of that understanding. But the committees are where we really see putting project level efforts together to actually create material to specifically solve this. So we want to create a guideline for owners that helps educate them on, yes, you don't need to know every minute detail, but like explain all the different technologies, what they should look for, what they can expect, so that they have that understanding when they go ask for it. And then on the user side, we have to get very technical and like, what's the registration process and how do you integrate control with a terrestrial scanner on a multi-story building? Otherwise, everybody's out there running 5 different directions, trialing things on their own, failing along the way. And unless we fix that problem, it actually just hurts the industry, because if a project fails, the owner is not happy, the project's delayed, people don't trust the technology. So if we as a community come together and solve some of these problems and help people perform work better, and we reduce the amount of errors and wrong tools being used on the job, it actually will boost the growth of the industry.
So of the myriad of technologies that are in our reality capture world, is there any that are kind of more promising or have the highest potential for growth than others? And how can people get involved with them?
Great question. Man, they all have a lot of opportunity for growth. And the reason I say that is like a lot of people, when a new scanner comes out, often people look at it and compare it to like, oh, it replaces that other type of scanner. And I think the opposite of like, well, they're slightly different. They have different pros and cons. They have different speeds. They have different price points. So really, they have the potential to solve different people's problems. If there's a little bit lower accuracy of a scanner, like a SLAM device, there's multiple of those. Those are faster. They're a little less accurate, but that's better fitting for maybe people who do a large amount of low accuracy need architectural jobs. But then there's really high-end devices that are more accurate, that are the device if you're doing big survey projects or high precision, engineering jobs. So they all have a lot of opportunity for growth. I would say, the terrestrial scanners, the mobile scanners, and the drone market, they're all growing a lot. And the other piece I would say is, I think the biggest room for growth is after the data is collected. So there's a lot of great devices. They all capture a lot of data. They have imagery, they have LiDAR, they have point clouds. What you do after with that data is the area that I see more room for growth. There are a lot of softwares out there. There are a lot of platforms, but I think as we see AI and machine learning and all these other things start getting pulled into how it can use the data, that's where we're going to see a lot of improvement.
Probably even just in, creating deliverables with data and also sharing the data, I think is the huge, there's a few platforms out there already that allow you to share that data, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth there and refinement, I guess you could say.
Yes. Yeah. One of the best ways to scale adoption is to figure out how to make it useful for more people. Historically, doing scanning, creating deliverables from it is a very, very, very specialized thing. Like, you have to really learn how to use that point cloud and draw from it or model to it and fit things properly. Or you need to buy multiple pieces of software that help with extraction and analysis. It's a very specialized thing. The idea of other platforms that are making it easier to share that data for other people to view or pull basic measurements. Well, now instead of an engineering firm of 50 having like 2 guys who know how to use that data, how can some of those new softwares or platforms or ideas get it to where maybe those guys still do the very specialized thing, but you can make the data useful to 30 more of those 50 people for viewing and compare, project meetings and project workflows. And, there's a lot of uses for the data, but I think it's the biggest area for improvement as well.
So I'm switching gears here. You've touched on this already, but you mentioned developing the guidelines in the committees tailored to different industries such as oil and gas versus, say, a hospital or architecture. Yeah. How do you plan to approach those differences, and what are the gaps that you're trying to fill with that?
Yeah. So, when I look at a lot of this is coming from the fact that I've worked on multiple and they're so different. Like, how do you approach a multi-story building versus how do you approach an oil and gas facility? Well, it all starts with what you have to capture, right? And hospitals, I mean, you're in clean environments. You have to work different, hours and shifts. You have above ceiling tiles with very packed environments of mechanical systems, and learning how to do that properly and what devices and what workflows and how to process the data accurately. And it's a very different approach than being in a large outdoor environment with, again, if you go to an oil and gas facility, you have large tanks, you have nozzles on the sides of tanks, you need to get up on top of them. Like, the guidelines and workflows that should be approached for those are very different. And then you also have to ask, who are the majority of the users of that data? And another, I say it a lot, but how accurate does that data need to be? Well, typically in industrial and in facilities, oil and gas, nuclear, all of those, they need really precise data because they are designing replacements of tanks and they need flanges to install directly and bolt in place. And so you have to make sure that you're using much more accurate equipment. You're supposed to, run very fine control processes to ensure you're not building up error. So the guideline that should be built to help educate, here's how you should approach an industrial facility and the things to think about, just completely different than a building, dealing with stairways and ceiling tiles. And the fact that there's nothing to help anybody understand that now means that everybody who goes to try to approach it is figuring it out on their own for the first time. That's why I think guidelines would be very useful, is if we think we're at early in the adoption and the growth of this across all industries, then instead of making everyone who's entering it now learn the hard way, if we can collaborate and create those guidelines, there's at least a starting point. No, not every project is the same. Not every hospital is the same. Not every oil and gas facility is the same. But if the principle is there of understanding, okay, the precision needs and the gear that is best, fit for doing this size of job and the survey control that might be needed because of, those all need to be worked through. So the way we approach them is the committees that we have are full of professionals that have been doing this for 2, 5, 15, a very wide range of years and across different industries. So as we approach these pain points, we talk about, okay, what are some of the industry guidelines we need? And we're going to work specifically together to come up with what everyone's best practices have been. What have people seen be successful? What are issues that we've seen? And we're going to do it with people who've worked on that industry or project type. So we're trying to gather the best information from the best people who have worked in those roles to try to build those best practices. And then replicate that across industries, across project types.
Yeah, so I think I first heard of you through the Clear Edge
Yeah.
webinar. What was it called? Scandabim University?
Yep. Yep. Scandium
So,
University a few years back.
and those were actually like super helpful to me. I was, I worked at a surveying company and we had done some scanning, and I had been exposed to scanning at a previous company. But, even when I was out with the quote unquote expert scanner, came from a surveying background, and I'm watching what they were doing, and I'm thinking, I don't know, I don't think I would have done it that way. And some of the things they were doing, like you said, they were learning on the fly. They became the
Yes.
expert because somebody threw a scanner at them,
Yep.
but it could have been better, is what my thought always was. And then when I found those Scandabim University series, that helped me like elevate my game quite a bit. And yeah, they were really good. It seems like an extension of that is what you're doing.
Yeah. So early on when we started RCN, we kind of did those Scandabim University at the same time. And it was a part of like, hey, we have this idea for building this. We did that in partnership with Clear Edge and some of those other guys. And this is like, it became such a passion for us. This became like, hey, this is my whole focus. My whole focus is trying to solve these problems, build this, not really just do a one-off webinar series, but like, how can I build an entire community and organization and events and around this idea of solving this problem like long term? But it was a great starting point. I think more content like that, more case studies, all of that material is useful to people now. And then the idea of committees is really not just presenting that, but actually creating material that the user can take back and say, here are some different best practices or guidelines or case studies. Another one that's been brought up on our committees is even material to go pitch when you're trying to do scanning for a building. What is the benefit? What's the ROI?
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Why would someone use it? So we want to create all of the above. We want to create material that's technical detail for the user. And then we want to create, sales material and case study material. And we want to create material to educate the owner. So we really are trying to solve the problem from both angles.
Yeah, that kind of information would be invaluable to share with the community to generate growth, across the community. And then, like you said, if the community is all collaborative, it helps everybody grow and learn at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's a big part of the plan.
The ASPRS, like positional accuracy standards, have followed a similar path in that after the last edition, which was published in 2014, there was like this desire for best practices. And so the new ones, which were just recently approved and published, have like I have them, I'm looking to the side here. They have general best practices for field surveying of ground control and checkpoints, and then a few for mapping with photogrammetry, mapping with LiDAR, mapping with UAS, and mapping with oblique imagery. So they're kind of like everything's kind of following the same path that you are, is that everybody realizes like there's a gap there that needs to be filled. So
yeah. And I've heard a couple of other organizations too talk about similar. And my thing is always like, okay, I want to figure out how to align with those organizations that are also working toward that, because my goal, like I said, is not to recreate something someone's working on. It's like, what are the gaps that are not being worked on? Or how can we further create material to actually train people on how to use these? Or so my goal really is to continue aligning with other organizations, other committees, other standards. I would much rather collaborate and point to things that exist and have partners in those areas than, try to recreate things that are already in motion.
So you had a chance to think about any specific areas where we could collaborate between ASPRS and RCN?
I would say we're early in those thoughts. I would love to dig into them further. Knowing that there is an expertise there around those standards, I think there's absolute room for collaboration from the educational aspect, from the standards aspect, collaboration with the committees, and then also in the areas that, really your guys' organization is the specialist in.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of expertise in like photogrammetry, remote sensing, UAS, LiDAR, GIS,
Yep.
and then a lot of members who are kind of the leaders in the field and a lot of academics as well. And if we can kind of combine and focus on emerging technologies, we can work together to create educational content.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of crossover between what you already have and a lot of the interests of members in ASPRS just from meetings. I hear random things brought up and I go, oh, actually, you know what? There actually is a podcast number. Well, I don't know them all off by heart, but I can go search. It's RCN and I'll find it and I'll send it to you. So
yeah, really that is our goal, is collaborating with other groups. Our education center on our website, though right now it's mostly filled with presentations and stuff from our conference and from things like that and some webinars. One of our long-term visions is, as we create collaborative relationships, is that can be a spot to go through and find other people's material too. Case studies that others in the industry have done, or, when we build out some of our resources, we want to list existing standards and push back to other organizations that are partnering with us. So I think all the above would be great things to continue talking about.
There's one thing I just thought of. So it's the journal is called Photogrammetric Engineering and Remote Sensing, and there's like the back half of the journal is the really technical, like peer-reviewed papers. But one area where I could see a lot of benefit would be the highlight articles. So there are these articles that don't go through like the rigorous peer review process, but they have a ton of value because they share information that doesn't it's not like a scientific discovery necessarily, but some of the things that you're working on would be excellent material for the highlight articles.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have a new strategic, or is it even new anymore? Strategic partnership with the GeoWeek.
Oh, yeah.
So yes. What can attendees expect from your collaboration there, and how will it enhance the experience and content available at the conference?
Awesome. Yeah, glad you brought that up. That's one of those examples of us really trying to pursue collaboration. We are hosting our own stage and track at GeoWeek. There is an RCN track, and we're really the ones now that will be cultivating the reality capture type content within the sessions at GeoWeek. So it's very much in collaboration with their organization, saying, look, we can benefit each other, we can collaborate, we can continue to build communities, we cross over and bring speakers, we share in the technologies. So really it's an effort to just continue to boost the community in whole. But yeah, we'll have our own whole stage where we're running sessions and panels. And then we'll also, last year was our first time doing it, but we will also have a podcast booth in the vendor hall at GeoWeek where we'll be doing some shorter little recording episodes with guests that are in person there and stuff. So yeah, it should be good. We're excited to be partnering with them.
So my next question is, what is Archon? And maybe you can compare and contrast like what you'll be having at GeoWeek in your track versus Archon, and talk about your strategies. Well, just talk about Archon and like how you set it up.
Yeah. So, as much as I love GeoWeek, and there's a couple other big industry events that I go to as well, Autodesk University, there's a few. I always had this idea for an event that would be a little bit different than most in our industry, where, a lot of those share a similar format where there's lots of breakout classes and there's a massive vendor hall. And I wanted something a little bit niche. I wanted it to be around just these technologies that we're focusing on, the professionals that are really digging in and trying to solve these problems. And it really stemmed because of the podcast and building that community and following and having so many people looking to learn. I've always loved networking. That's how I built so many relationships. I was like, I'd love to just put on our own event and bring these people together. But I also wanted to put on an event that was a little bit different. I didn't want to do the standard breakout classes, because as much as I do love those at other events, there are also challenges I see with them where there's so many going on at once. You can't figure out which is where. They have a small room capacity. The speaker doesn't get that big of an audience because it's a small room. So I made the decision of like, I want to do a one stage approach, kind of like the TEDx of our industry, where we have one massive theater. Everyone is watching the same presentations. And I think there's a couple benefits to that. One, we don't have to try to fulfill hundreds of speakers and different topics. We have one track, and we get to choose very highly curated content that we think is valuable or important. And it some people, obviously you have the choice to come in and out of the room or maybe skip a session. But one thing that it also might do is force you to watch something that maybe you wouldn't have chosen to watch if you had to choose on a big breakout session method. If you're sitting in that auditorium and it's like, hey, next up is this one on digital twins for airports. Well, maybe initially you're like, I don't know. That's not really my space. I don't work in airports. But what if you sat and watched it? What if it inspires you to go approach a different way of doing work that you're doing, or a different line of business, or you see a way that they're using a certain platform you didn't know about yet? So I like the idea of everybody at the event is watching the same content and learning the same thing, even if it's different angles or different industries. It really helps build that awareness to things that you might not choose to go watch. So I do like that. The other thing that we put a big focus to is our evening networking events. A lot of events, I know there's a lot of reasons that they may do it, but they close down at 5 or 6 p.m., right? They finish presentations and it's like, hey, that's the end of the day. And sometimes they'll have like a little 1 hour mingle networking thing. And then everybody gets dispersed. It's like the event center's closing, and everybody that goes to conferences, they still want to hang out. They still want to meet each other. They're trying to build relationships, but they get lost, and some go to a restaurant, some go to a bar, and you're like, you don't even know where everyone is. So we took that and said, if one of the most valuable things about an event is building relationships and networking, then let's just keep the entertainment and the happy hour and the networking at the event the whole evening, every evening. So we get done with a full day of presentations and panels. And then from dinner time through 10:30 p.m., we have something going on every night. We have a big casino night up in our stadium skybox. We have a big football field night on the stadium football field. We have a big arcade night in the venue. Like, we do something, because when you get a chance to unplug and you stop focusing on the presentations, you've learned enough from that. Now you're actually getting to connect and converse and communicate and build relationships and ask questions and meet the speakers. And that's the time that I think is the most valuable. So we try to put a lot of attention to that piece.
Yeah, I think that part's definitely unique. I was at a conference that was a pipeline conference, and it was similar to how you have it set up with one hall, but then at 5 o'clock it shut down, everybody left. But I found so much value in that. Like you said, sitting there, you're like, oh, what's this next speaker going to be about? And you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe I should go walk around or something. But I sat there and sat through it. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, I had no idea about, X technology or this, that, or the other thing. So it was super valuable.
Yeah. And I think for our industry, even if it's not something you're going to do, right, the awareness of what different industries are doing and how they're using these tools, the one common theme throughout all of our content is that it's around capture, processing, models, delivery, intelligent processing, AI. Like it's all those technologies are a similar through line in every presentation, but it might be about an airport or a racetrack or a survey company or an architect. And so how you see other people using them and the challenges they had or the successes they had, you have something to learn from.
Yeah, definitely. So I have 2 questions left on my list, and then I think Yusuf's got another few hours of questions for you. But
perfect.
So this one's a personal one. What's your greatest achievement to date?
Greatest achievement to date. Oh, see, yeah, I have so many to pick from. Because one of the most important things to me, honestly, is family. So I'd have to go back to my raising 5 kids. That's an achievement.
I'd say
I'm surviving it, so I feel like I'm achieving it.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's the personal side and there's the professional side. You know, going, I would say that on the personal side, right, is my family, but on the business side, I guess successfully building a startup that grew to a company that, you know, ended up going through an acquisition last year. And I'm on to, you know, still supporting that, but I'm on to round 2. It's exciting to see that through. You know, it was a very difficult journey, but I count that as a wonderful achievement of not giving up, even though there were multiple times that I maybe tried. Yeah.
I guess it just makes you that much more resilient going forward.
Yep. You're like, oh, I can handle that. I've done worse. I've been
Yeah,
through worse.
exactly.
Yep.
I have 5 kids. This won't phase me at all.
Exactly. Maybe that leads to the resilience in business.
So if anybody wants to reach out to you to talk more or get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Most people know I do live and breathe on LinkedIn. So you can always connect there, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I try to be very open and, you know, as much as I can squeeze in calls with people or meetings or intro calls or podcasts or anything like that. I try to. So yeah, I would start with LinkedIn just because that's super easy. And then from there, I can always share, you know, email and things like that. And as far as everything we have going on, committees, podcasts, conference, all of that is, you know, you can find on our website at realitycapturenetwork.com.
Perfect. And I can vouch that Matt will actually respond to your message and probably in a timely manner if you reach out on LinkedIn. But on that note, make it personalized. Don't make it generic.
There you go. Yep.
So
that I agree with.
So I'm going to open it up here. I think Yusuf might have some questions, and there might be some others. Yusuf's the only one that's been messaging me. So if anybody else has a question, fire it in the chat, and we'll ask Matt here.
Thank you very much, Matt. This is really very inspiring. And
Appreciate it.
the way you articulate things forces us, me actually, to watch this episode again and again, because there's so many places that you said things in an amazing way. You know,
I appreciate it.
like what you said about what the people need, how can I do it? You know, like exactly if you want to think about the business, because sometimes when you're going about becoming an entrepreneur, you feel like, okay, I have the customer base, but there's so many components that you have to put together before you make the decision.
Yep.
Like what the people needs, how can I do it good? And the most important thing, you are one of the few guests that highlight the importance of LinkedIn. And Greg has been doing a good job inviting people who are specialized in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
To educate our ECPC people that you have to create your own brand.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people don't do that. So you mentioned about the secret recipe is conferences, LinkedIn, and diving into technology.
That was mine. Yes. I do think that conferences, meeting people, connecting on LinkedIn, and then being active with, you know, sharing and engaging with people on LinkedIn, sharing examples of the type of work you're doing, posting questions, commenting and interacting with those in your community, definitely have added a lot of value.
Yeah, and my favorite part about your approach is you said collaboration is a major part of the growth of your company.
Yep.
And you don't see competitors, you see potential collaborator.
Yep. No competitors.
This aligns with something I heard that one person says, like you can people put it as a status. They say, you cannot compete with me because I want you to succeed.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I see exactly what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. That's a good way to put it. Yep.
Yeah, so nobody can compete with somebody who wants everybody to succeed.
Yep. And you know what I've seen, because that's very much my mindset, and what I try to tell people is that not everybody thinks that way. You know,
exactly.
So many people have a a closed mind, or they see everyone as competition, and they don't open up and realize there's so much opportunity that you don't have to see people in that light. It doesn't hurt me for you to go be successful.
And the synergy.
Yep.
They lose the synergy part, because
Yes.
when you go in the mindset and you bring so much positivity, the way your approach is, I want to empower people. I want to, share what I have, my success stories. People then they feel that this is the right person, this is the right team that I want to be part of, and this invites more collaborators, I would say.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Sometimes those that are competitive think in the short term that it's more successful to them to be competitive and keep it to themselves. But over the long term, it ends up hurting you, because people don't want to work with you, or people see that you aren't open and willing to communicate well, or, there's negative effect from it, that if that one change is something that people would make, I think it has the ability to open more doors for them.
And I'm sure it's contagious, the spirit that you have to all RCN members. I'm pretty sure this is the way everybody thinks, and you're attracting them.
Yeah.
They stick to it, and they make it a nice family and a very appealing environment to be.
Yes, we try to do so. For me, as I grow a team, I look for people that that think that way, that come off that way. I think company culture and the people you work with it's very important, because there's that atmosphere, and there's the way people treat, and I try to be consistent. I try to act this way everywhere.
Exactly, and I can see it extending to the members that are the participants of our, our con.
Yes,
where you put them in one room, it's people oriented.
Yes.
Everybody shares the journey. They can talk about it. Who went to the conference, they can talk about everything in the conference. They didn't miss anything.
Yeah, it's been very nice seeing some of this approach and this mission and this mindset rub off to other people, and they come to the event. I've had people come up to me even at the event. There was a guy last year that came from Europe, and he was like, I traveled out here, and even traveling out here, I was kind of hesitant. I didn't really understand your mission. I was wondering if this was like a scheme for you or something. And he's like, after being here and seeing really what you're doing and what you're talking about, and the community and how they're all buying in, it really changed my mind. And like, I'm fully bought in. I see the mission of really wanting everyone to be successful. And I'm like, good, that's my goal.
Yeah. And the mission of educating people, I think that's a tough mission for anybody who's working in geospatial or anything, because people who are none, because there's two ways to talk to people who are already involved. As you said, your dad is a surveyor. That's how you got into this.
Yep.
And you know that something like this exists. We're trying to talk to people who are none, or
Yes.
don't have a family member, or never exposed to anything geospatial. And I think this is the right time, because mapping is everywhere now.
Yes. Yeah. No, it really is a good time. And I see a lot of interest in pulling in some of this content and figuring out how to get it in earlier to STEM programs or universities, or, and then I think that we as a community can also do good in awareness through social, through sharing. So I think we're going to see a lot of increase in awareness and interest.
That's very interesting. And I want to add something about the one room environment, what Greg was saying. I want to add, and you mentioned that there is multiple sectors. They say, if you are focused vertically into one thing, you're going to be productive. If you go horizontal a little bit, like how you bring people from airports, bring people from the hospitals, everybody, that's an amazing environment for innovation.
Yeah.
Because you can see the whole thing, and people are becoming more ideas, and it will be a more creative experience for everybody, instead of only knowing about their own problems and never look outside of the box what the other people are doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see that as a big benefit, because some industries are ahead of others in implementing the tool, or how they use it, or what softwares, or so trying to get everyone's perspective it really, I agree, it very much creates a better environment for innovation and new ideas. And you leave that event from hearing all these, variety of things, and you go back and go, wow, like we can use this piece and we can use that, and this is how it works for our industry or our company. But you wouldn't have known all those different things if you didn't kind of spread yourself out to listen and learn, from others.
I just want to thank you because I see like your journey as something that people can take the small steps and can assess, because one of the major things that we started this podcast when we started it is to help people who think they want to explore the entrepreneurship, because we invited a lot of people in the geospatial who own their company to share their success story. So there is a decision, the time, and if you qualify, because there is a lot of leadership skills, a lot of, being a giver.
Yes.
So people who qualify. So today you put us a good example, and the way you put the components that you can look at and see if you're ready or not, you did it in a very amazing way. And my favorite, how you put the podcast as a one major component and building a network before you even think about going further.
Yes. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad I could share some of my story and journey. And again, I'm always open for people that have more questions as they are pursuing their own path. And back to what you said, I truly want to see everybody be successful, whatever path that looks like for them. So appreciate you guys inviting me on.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Well, on behalf of ASPRS, we're looking forward to more collaboration with RCN. And for all the listeners or viewers, check out Matt's podcast, the RCN podcast. Check out Archon. And if you don't make it to Archon, be sure to say hi to Matt at GeoWeek next year.
Perfect. That sounds great. Well, thanks again, and we'll hope to see at least one of them.
Thanks, Matt.
All righty. Take care.